Okay, for this next section, basically I'm going to probably go to up to 24, dealing with all the quadrilaterals. It is important that you reference your little summary sheet that I gave you, the pink copy. Yes, you're going to have a copy of this for your test, but you want to make sure you understand the markings for each shape, and then you can identify what part or what given information and what property that's listed over here that applies. So what you needed to do on the chart was just kind of go through your properties and see which shape that the property applied to. So I kind of already did that here if you need to check your answer. I did put a little dot here on the consecutive angles are supplementary for the trapezoid, only because that's only with one set of consecutive angles, so only with top and bottom does that work. For isosceles, it works for opposite angles are supplementary, but for a regular trapezoid, it only works for the top, like the left side and the right side. It doesn't work for all. That's why I put a little dot here. Okay, so if you need an explanation for our answers here, like starting with the rhombus, I kind of did this in class. I did my markings. Basically, I go and I look at, oops, that's the wrong thing. I look at the rhombus. And I knew it was a rhombus based on the markings that I saw, which was the box in the interior. So anytime I see this little box here, I should put that red, that only happens with certain shapes. So it happens with the square right here, happens with the rhombus, and it happens with the kite. And so of the three, the shape that I was given on the shape that I knew it was going to be related to on number 17 was a rhombus. So what I did was I just duplicated these markings, the arcs, because we had a 53 and we had an aid, a segment, part of the diagonal. So that's what we did here. I just duplicated my markings, dealing with the angles. And so I knew that anything that had the same marking was going to be congruent. So since I had a single arc here at 21, that means y is 21. There's 21 over here, 21 right here. And then to find my missing x, I use the right triangle that exists in the rhombus and just did 90 minus 21. Okay. So for number 18, if you need help with that, the key word, or what they tell us here, is that we have, diagonals of a rectangle are shown for the rectangle PQRS. They did give us this, it's given the angle and it's given the diagonal. It tells us that QS, our diagonal QS here, is 18. So I'm just going to focus on looking at my rectangle here and mark my diagonals that I see, and use that to help me find my missing parts to the diagonal. So if I mark it just like I see here, tick mark, tick mark, tick mark, tick mark, and I know that QS here represents that whole diagonal, and that's 18, then that means that it gets bisected, and it would have to be 9 and 9. So if I'm looking for ST, which is this piece right here, that's 9, compared to PR, that's another diagonal. If I wasn't too sure for the different diagonal, I can refer back to my rectangle and read about the diagonals. There it says they bisect each other. Right there it says they are congruent. They're equal to each other. So that means PR is going to be 18. Okay, just like QS. All right. And then I did 19 in class. That's when you had to draw your picture. And remember, your diagonals create right triangles, so you will have to use Pythagorean theorem. I believe when we plug it in, our legs here are the perpendicular sides where the right angle is formed. So this would be 8 squared plus 12 squared equals c squared. We would have 64, sorry. 64 plus 144 equals c squared. Okay. And then c squared, I'm just going to kind of write this backwards, but it's the same thing. I'm just using the symmetrical property that just says I can switch them around, all right? So c squared is going to equal the 288 and then you're going to take the square root to get C. So if I basically I could do it right here too. I could put that square root over that whole operation. So our answer is approximately 14.4. Okay. So on the next page, some more quadrilaterals. I did put the property here to help you. So hopefully on 20, you saw diagonals bisect each other. Saw this tick mark was 10. So M should be 10 because they have the same tick mark as 10. And to get to my N minus 3 is going to equal the 8. So to solve for N, you're just adding the 3 on both sides. So N is 11. So here we're using opposite angles are congruent because I had an angle 103 and I look across it and it's going to be congruent. So my setup was what I had over here. B plus 16 equals 103. You should have subtracted the 16 to isolate the B. And we would have B equals, what was it? 87? Yeah, 87. Now, for A, we have opposite sides are congruent, and I try to show that with the tick mark. So your A minus 10 equals 18. You're solving A by adding 10 on both sides. So here A equals 28. Okay. 21, we addressed, or I drew and added my diagonals. Because we're dealing with diagonals, if I wasn't too sure what happens with diagonals of a rhombus, I would go back to my sheet here and read about diagonals of a rhombus. These basically three properties here. They bisect each other, so that's why there's a tick mark, but then two tick marks, so they're not congruent. They're perpendicular, which is why we have the box, and they bisect out the angles. The angles are equal to each other. So when I'm doing this problem, I'm given the diagonals. I should know that they bisect each other, so that's why I have 5 and 5. 12 and 12, and then we have that right triangle, and we can use Pythagorean theorem. When you work this out, you get 144 and 25 equals x squared, which comes out to be 169 equals x squared, and then when you take the square root, this comes out to be a perfect square here. X, or side, equals 13. So each side is 13, 13, 13. If I needed to find the perimeter, I could just take that 13 and multiply by 4. But it's just asking for the side, so you should be good on that. Now, on 22, I went ahead and marked it, just like I have the markings here on the rhombus, then with the angles and with the segment. So I just made my interior match my summary sheet. And then I could see I had to fill in each angle measure. So DAC, D to A to C, we look inside in between the two sides here, was 53. Our AED, we still need help with, seeing the angle. Trace the letter, stop at the middle letter. That was 90. And then ADC was 37. To get to the 37, we just did 90 minus 53 because there's 4 right triangles there. And then we're going to omit AE and AC because we only have one actual segment, which is the DB I can get because I knew DE was 8. I don't know if y'all see that there. Kind of erased it, sorry. So this is 8. So the whole segment is 16. Okay, so DB is 16. Now for 23, now since they're asking us to find the measure of these angles, I'm going to use this 62 here. And we're dealing with the right rectangle, excuse me. So if I go to my rectangle example, notice that on the rectangle here, we have a single arc and then a double arc. And then we're supposed to remember there are 4 right angles. So those together make a 90 degree. So when I go to my picture here, I'm going to do a single arc, double arc. Every one of them is going to be like that. So I could have a double arc, single arc, double arc, double arc, single arc. I'm just basically tracing the same pattern from the summary sheet sheet. So right here for my single arts, those are 62. So I know everywhere I had that single art is going to be a 62. Okay. Oops, not there. Sorry. 62. And then this needs to get erased. Now, to get that angle adjacent to it, which I believe, let me do here, QPR, that's that double arc right there, you're going to have to do 90 minus 62. So we should have 28 for this one. And then for PTQ, okay, PTQ is here. So if I go back to marking my angles, all that I know this is 28. This had a double arc right here, so that would be 28 as well. And I can use this triangle where PTQ is, that isosceles triangle, to find that missing angle. So what I would do is double that 28. That comes out to be 56. And then do 180 minus 56. And that's how we get 124 as our answer. Then on 24, since it was a square, I did the same thing. I looked at that square and I put all the markings on the square to match. Okay. And so that's why it was easy to answer this one, because I have 45, I have a 90, or I have my part of my diagonal, which is 15 right there. So the first one, they're talking about angles. The measure of angle E to J to F. That right there is going to be 90 degrees. Now, J to F to G, that's going to be 45. Now, the measure of FH, F to H, that's going all the way across. Now, since I knew part of it is 15, that means the whole thing is 30. And then EJ was just part of the diagonal right here with that tick mark, so that was 15. Okay. Now when you get to 25, this is when we are dealing with a median. Okay, so I kind of highlighted a median and I just made, let me go ahead, I'll probably redo this one with y'all. I went ahead and made highlight the median in red, and I'm going to show you two formulas that might help you. Now on the formula chart or the summary sheet here, it tells us this median, which is this segment here, is the same thing as a mid segment, okay? And that's the formula used for the median. So what I'm just going to rewrite that here. So your median equals half of your base plus base, is what it says on the sheet, right? Base plus base. Because every trapezoid has two bases. They have what we tend to go the top base, which is our base 1, and our bottom base, which is our base 2. Okay, just understanding what base plus base is. Now, another way of writing this formula, instead of saying 1/2 times, I could, to get rid of that fraction, is multiply everything by 2. So another way to do the formula is if I double the median, 2 times the median, it is going to equal base plus base. Okay, so I can see that relationship here on 25B, because they start off with EF, which is the median section, is 13, and they tell us that DC, which is this bottom base, is 6. They want us to find AB, which is that top base. So if I substitute the parts, since this is our median, put that there. I put that in parentheses and times it by 2. It's going to equal to base, one of the bases, which is 6, plus the other base, which I don't have. So I'm going to put an X there. So really what I would have, if I double the 13, that's going to give me 26 equals 6 plus X. Well, if I subtract 6 on both sides, so that lets me know 20 is our missing base X. All right, so that takes care of that page. If you need help on the last page, then just fast forward, hit the fast forward the right arrow, and it'll go to the next set. Thanks, guys.